Hello, it's Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, and today I'm honored to speak with two members of ACALA, and that is one that is certainly well known right throughout the blockchain space right now and long before as well for their credibility, for their trust, and also for their diligence in terms of code and building something that is useful, real, and arguably something that everyone is paying attention to right now. So thank you very much, Betty, and to Ruitao for being here to explain all things ACALA regarding the updates as well.
Yeah, thank you for having us here, Bradley.
Yeah, super excited to be here, Brad. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and it is my honor to speak with you. Obviously, in transparency, this is entirely free. The premise is education, and most importantly, provide you, the listener, with all the updates that are literally coming from the source, and you get no better than founders of ACALA. So just a recap quickly, if we could start, Betty, with regard to the fundamentals in terms of what ACALA stands for. Now, it says on the website, you're a decentralized finance hub and stablecoin platform that's powered by cross-blockchain liquidity and applications. It's a mouthful, but it sounds like it's really making it clear that you're so much more than just one blockchain focus. You're so much more than just an offering for one suite or one, I guess, one platform as it references. So how would you define it now in this, since we've spoken last, there's a lot's happened. In a nutshell, how would you really want to sort of preface and explain ACALA to all of the newbies out there, the people who maybe don't know anything about blockchain?
Yeah, I think our vision still stays the same. Our view of the future is there will be multiple blockchains, and then they're going to be interoperable. And then more importantly, the applications that we create is going to be all composable at all levels. And what that means to the end users is the apps that you use is going to be seamless. The cost will be low. And then you probably don't care where the liquidity comes from, and then they can all be aggregated and then to serve your needs, which is, for ACALA, is making your money work for you, right? So if we drill down a little bit in detail, ACALA is the DeFi hub for Polkadot, and also, we can go into a bit more detail later, as we're also going to be launched on Kusama as well as the DeFi hub serving the Kusama community, and at the same time, you don't just label yourself as a DeFi hub and you become a DeFi hub, right? Like any of the blockchains. So, for example, we offer a suite of financial primitives, we call, because users can use them as end products. Developers can use them as Lego blocks to actually build more complicated I guess, DeFi products, if you like. So the primitives that we offer, they are stablecoin, but they are crypto-backed, collateralized stablecoin. And those crypto collaterals can come from multiple different blockchains. And that's where the cross-chain part that you mentioned comes from. So there could be Bitcoin that arrive at ACALA, and then without selling your Bitcoin, you can collateralize it for a stablecoin, either for trading or maybe use that to participate, for example, in Polkadot's proof of stake economy, and then earning some handsome staking yield without actually selling your Bitcoin, right? So, so that's one. So stablecoin is one, and then the second is a automatic market making type of decentralized exchange, which is probably very much needed to actually bootstrap the liquidity and the DeFi arena, I guess, in Polkadot. And then the third one will be an interesting one that we can go into also detail later if you're interested, is the liquid staking. So basically allowing folks to stake, enjoying the staking yield, while also freeing the asset to be used in DeFi to earn DeFi yield at the same time. So that's the liquid staking protocol that we have. I'll actually stop there so that you can
yes, thank you so much, because
whichever direction you like. Yeah.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that recap on those key primitives, and it is important to understand the difference between those and the protocol itself. So Ruitao, I wanted to go to you for a moment, because I'll go back to Betty to sort of extrapolate and expand on each of those primitives. They do really matter. They are the bedrock, I guess, key assets right now for ACALA, but underpinning that is the protocol itself. And what's exciting is that, much like the layer zero narrative for Polkadot more generally, you really do embody that technologically. And I stress that word technologically because you are trying to be that cross-chain conduit, binding the binding glue that brings DeFi to life. And DeFi, once again, is that agnostic term you're bringing to life by proof. So do you want to touch on the protocol? Do you want to touch on the context of DeFi? Really just anything that cements the value of the protocol itself?
Yeah, I think it's generally on a big picture. We think network is growing into what we call specialization, and that's actually what Polkadot enables, right? So think about all the projects; they are specialized network. It wouldn't be possible without the relation to provide security before that a developer can launch a specialized network in a like a few click of the button. So we think Polkadot enables developer like us with this new possibility of like choose a sector, choose a few, and then create what we call a specialized network. And ACALA, with its built-in core protocol, are essentially one specialized network, specialized for DeFi. And if we imagine that given the possibility to create a network and able to customize the network down to its core business logic level, what would you do things differently if you're able to given this sort of flexibility? And you can start to see the power of a specialized network comes in. In our cases, in ACALA, all the protocol work seamlessly to provide an streamlined DeFi experience, such as like gas fee can be paid in any form of tokens. And we're actually trying to achieve the lowest possible gas fee because we think the gas fee itself is actually like a barrier of entry for people to participate in DeFi. And what Polkadot enables is that we don't actually have to accrue the value in gas fee. We can accrue the value of this network in some other meaningful instruments, such as like the transactions, like the user activities. We're actually trying to lower the fee to the bare minimum. I mean, to put that in a bigger picture is that we think network in Polkadot or the project in Polkadot are going slowly to specialized network. And all those specialized network are able to talk with each other to thrive in their own field, in their own sector, and but still yet connected through the relation and value it could be circulating. And this is why we are so excited about like what the next version or what the next big thing is going to look like in the blockchain space.
Right. And, you know, everything that you said there, I keep thinking back to the word user. So in that sense, you know, even Betty had said this earlier, that it really does depend on making sure that that tech affords the best user experience, the best UX, UI, but more importantly, those transaction fees. I mean, that's something that is relevant right now, particularly in 221 with the bottlenecks, with the cost, with the sheer, you know, exhaustion of some blockchains right now, and you being cross-chain. We're going to expand on that and just how valuable that that EVM work has been done and recently launched. So Betty, let's go back again to reiterate, I think, and that's important because those primitives, those products, those offerings, they are something that you built, you know, throughout this time. But both of you and your whole team, you also spent a very long time on that protocol establishment to make sure it was robust, it was standalone as well. So is it fair to say that that was the sequential processes to get to that primitive position where you had to collaboratively work on the protocol as Ruitao referenced, but then build out these fundamental offerings, which are the primitives that really showcase what ACALA can do?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that, you know, the primitives that were built is kind of what makes, as part of the construct of the ACALA protocol, right? So those 3 financial primitives, and then we can also continue to add additional primitives if it deems, you know, useful in the in the ecosystem. For example, you know, you kind of alluded to it, EVM module is also a primitive. So in the substrate, in the Polkadot world, adding a new module is like downloading an app and installing it from the App Store. So it's straightforward to do that. So ACALA is a EVM compatible platform. But of course, you know, to stick to where our user vision is, everything needs to be seamless and also composable for all of the DeFi applications. So we made our EVM also, you know, having those special features. For example, bring your own gas. Right. So we've recently, you know, worked with Ampleforce and other teams. So one of the advantage is when Ampleforce goes multi-chain, which is their original vision, they will deploy their smart contract onto ACALA. So in addition to the users are now able to have Ample, you know, as another alternative, kind of like a stable, algorithmic stable currency, we can also make the Ample token as a fee token. So Ample users can just hold Ample and then transact in Ample and paying fees in Ample as well. And those are the things that it would not be possible if you only operate in the smart contract EVM sandbox, because we have the ability to kind of integrate at all levels, right? So we're full stack blockchain, and we're able to have those innovations like that. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And Ruitao, I want to expand on what Betty's saying, because as you both know, and I think you've even talked about this, is that there are some, I guess, barriers when it comes to smart contracts for the relay chain itself, or Polkadot's design. And you're opening up that entire conversation technologically, and even referencing Plasma as well. We can do that because with the EVM compatibility, with the composability built in, you are literally bringing in the potential of Ethereum into ACALA, and reciprocally doing so for devs and for, I guess, tech tinkerers the world over. So what does it mean to you, Ruitao, for having this technology in terms of the potential of ACALA in a real less FOMO sense, in that genuine sense of the potential? Because once these devs start tinkering here, for all the reasons of the features, I think that they'll stay. It's hard for me technologically to think they wouldn't.
Yeah, I would think that from a developer's point of view, if you look at a specialized network, such as a network as ACALA, you will look at that, hey, there's an EVM playground for you to deploy contracts, but there's also the primitive that were created, such as the AUSD, the built-in DApps, the liquid staking. All those are also exposed via what we call the pre-deploy contract, and make it available for EVM, for Solidity developer to tap into. So think about someone as a Solidity developer, when they want to deploy a solution on top of ACALA, not only they have the full experience of like deploying something similar on Ethereum, they also get instant access to the DApps, to the stablecoin, to the liquid staking protocol. They're able to reprogram those. So in our senses, in our belief, that EVM, or the smart contract capability, is just one additional feature of a specialized network. And for example, for Pardom's cases, they have the layer 2 solution to further optimize for performance. And you can start to imagine like different sort of specialized network. For example, I start to imagine maybe there would be a gaming chain, and then there would be smart contract deployed on top of the gaming chain that you can start to reprogram the NFT within that gaming chain. And how amazing would that be? So start to thinking about like, hey, if they're going to be like specialized network, and then if they're going to be like smart contract capability, how are those things start to play together and to achieve what we envision, the multi-chain future?
Right. And, that's a perfect segue, Betty. I'd love to hear from you on this, because if we're talking multi-chain and we're talking layer 0, that, again, for many who don't know, that literally, it reflects the multi-chain agenda anyway. It's literally about interoperability by technological design. So surely you guys are advocates of bringing in the best of the blockchains, rather than, support any kind of ridiculous maximalist narrative that really does nothing for innovation anyway.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of like firm believer of the future is going to be multiple blockchains, like multi-blockchain. And also, we actually think even further ahead is like, we actually think composability is not going to be just constrained within one chain. I think that's currently, I guess Ethereum's done really well, right? Well, the gas problem aside, I think they've built quite an ecosystem. And then the main reason for that is composability within their EVM. And then projects built on top of each other. And then they're going to leverage each other's users, resources, as well as liquidity. So that's really a cool thing to see, right? And then now we got to a stage to see, how do we scale that composability? Right. I think that is the big question. Like, is it layer 2 or is it onto a different shard or a different blockchain? But what we've seen very practically in the Polkadot ecosystem is we've recently, done all got connected on the testnet of the parachains, where we not only connected as blockchains to each other, so which means values like assets can flow freely across multiple blockchains, but also the states can potentially be composable as well. So what I mean is, like on ACALA, you could have BTC. So for example, there's a common good bridge for Bitcoin to mint Bitcoin onto Polkadot. So we could actually compose that so that the ACALA users can potentially, one click and getting that BTC from the BTC network. And then using that to collateralize with a stable coin. And then also one click, and then you can cross to a privacy chain. And then now you get back a privacy coin with the transactions or hidden and protected from the user. So now you can actually have gone into the era of composable chains or composable blockchains, as well as all the dApps on top of it, right? So if you think about that picture, you all of a sudden opens up a much bigger design space for innovators and developers. So as for ACALA, we are the plumbers. Like we build infrastructures that enable and empower all of that's coming along our way, I guess.
It's a great analogy, and in many respects, you're also the electricians because you're lighting up that neural network. Quite sincerely, I think that's a really good way to look at, if we use the metaphor of, I guess, a neural network, is that you're bringing the whole brain to life. That blockchain brain, with reflecting all the different elements, those nodes can actually function as independent blockchains. And there's so much more to come. We're really hitting the cusp of this really into 21, and there's so much more technologically can be done. But let's go back to those dApp networks. Let's go back to the smart contracts. Let's talk about this in the sense of those multi-chains as well, even beyond Ethereum, because you both would know that there's a lot of tinkering happening at layer 1 as well, right across the globe, and you're bringing this to life. Do they know that, do you think? I mean, is there a lot of discussion happening inter-chain? And I literally mean that, not just intra-chain, because there's two things that's interesting here is you have the parachain, the parallelization also within the ecosystem of Polkadot. But then you have that really exciting development where you can bring and potentially support all of these other blockchains and allow them, to showcase their potential, their real ability through these important, and bespoke technologies that you've built through that composable EVM entry into Ethereum. I mean, these really are understated, I think, Betty, because this is hard to do. This is really, technologically very tough, and you're achieving that perhaps as a first mover.
Yeah, I think there's also if you're talking about multi-chain, the actual bridges across and beyond Polkadot, there's actually quite a number of teams that's exploring at that sector, right? So we know Snowfork that's already working on Ethereum bridge. We know Polkadot, which from Interlake is working on a Bitcoin bridge. And the more exciting stuff is that I can start to see networks start to found it and start to focus on this area. We know quite a number of teams, they were trying to start a specialized network to have like a hub between different blockchain. For example, RAN is one example. They have this RAN VM able to connect with ease with Polkadot. And there's another team that ACALA, I think they call ACALA. They are creating another hub that can be interconnected with like Avalanche and Polkadot. And I think the more we are diving into this multi-chain future, the more of this infrastructure bridges will be created, and it's going to be better for the traders, that's going to be the consumers to be able to circulate their capital, their assets between different blockchains. And I think the least thing that you would want is that you have all this liquidity silo of fragmentation and liquidity. Like Bitcoin is always within the Bitcoin network because it's unable to circulate beyond the Bitcoin network and have like utility out of the Bitcoin network. So I think all this infrastructure being created is just like the very, very early stage of movement, like how asset could be circulated from one chain to another. Because if you look at the real world asset could be circulated within one system to another system, in one country to another country. On blockchain, I think it's gonna slowly follow on that. And I mean, ultimately, you would like to see no longer like this liquidity silo. This no longer like chain is unable to. Essentially, it's actually quite frankly like currently the central exchange is essentially acting as bridges between different assets. But I think this is going to be decentralized at some stage.
Yes, and thanks to your technology. And that sort of harks back to, I guess, the misnomer people have, even in right now, if they're studying ACALA, they may incorrectly think that this is a Polkadot project. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because Betty, one of the things you've said in recent interviews is that ACALA is a sovereign blockchain in one sense, or you've referenced DAO 3.0 in another instance. And that's because arguably, whilst there is that direct conduit, that direct support for Polkadot, let's be frank, that's there. And there's an immense respect for the parachain technology and the parity technology that's backing it. The reality is that all of that, the agenda is to bring all blockchains together to make things more seamless for users and for DApps, for applications and for developers. So would you like to just comment, either of you, on, clarifying that you whilst the kind of position you have with Polkadot, and also in the context of this global sort of Web3 agenda that underpins even that with the Web3 Foundation?
Yeah, so I actually think, Web3 is a very broad vision that we're trying to have decentralized internet and also giving the power back to the users, right? So I think everyone has that vision works in Web3, actually thinking about users or individuals, right? So I think when we say, we're building in Polkadot, there are many other blockchains, Ethereum included. It's not like, I think the wrong mindset would be one chain is taken away users or developer from the other chain. I think the mindset should always be, how do we actually connect with each other, composable with each other, so we can actually increase our users that we attract from the mainstream world, right? Non-crypto world. That those are the majority of the people that aren't on crypto yet, that haven't enjoyed the so-called democratizing of finance yet. Those are the people that we need to actually focus on, rather than focus on the PT 0.001% on the current blockchain that paying $100 for gas fees, right? So I think everyone else is trying to help actually to elevating the pain and then actually getting closer to that vision of actually giving access, like more making finance more accessible, at least from our domain of DeFi, is trying to achieve that. So yeah, from that perspective, I think our vision should be longer and also wider, and also have a more collaborative and more friendly sort of supportive mentality, rather than hostile and maximalist. That's not quite helping.
Totally agree. Beautifully said. And I also wanted to ask you with regard to this, Betty, or Ruitao, is that what are your thoughts also on that fundamental application layer? We talked about scaling, and maybe we could talk about that further, because we know that even in Ethereum, the reality is those scaling solutions aren't quite there yet. Even with optimism and the ZK rollups, all the roll-up technology experimentation, it's still a long way ahead, for that to be optimized, quite sincerely. And then we know that the user-centric approach is fundamental to ACALA, and the DApps and the applications are really the secret sauce of all of this lighting up. So how do we get to that position, and where are we in the roadmap with regard to all of this technology, all the primitives coming together for ultimately users, to expand the reach, to have that adoption, so that underpinning this, the engine's firing, everything's seamless underneath that you're building. But most importantly, we have that user proof because of A, the scaling, and B, an increasing number of DApps.
Yeah, I think on the core infrastructure side, like if you talk about layer 2 on Ethereum, and let's ultimately, my thought is that there's not going to be like one solution to fit them all. It's like there's not going to be like one chain to solve all the problem as well. So I think all the different scaling capability, like Ethereum layer 2 is quite promising. There's another faster layer 1. All those are promising. I think all those are all viable, and we are going to see different flavor of scaling in the near future. I don't think there's going to be like optimism gonna take it all. I don't think there's going to be like the ZK roll up, they're gonna take it all. I think it's gonna be again, some layer 2 will be specialized for something, and some other layer 2 will be specialized for something else. So as we envision a specialized network, in our cases, we think layer 2 is also a specialized network. And in ACALA's capability, we think the base performance of like the power chain itself is already quite promising. We did a lot of tests ourselves. We went through a lot of like both benchmark ourselves in our engineer team. We actually run it through with a simulated Rikuku relation to see actually how much transaction we'll be getting at. So I think we are very comfortable. We can see the gas fee or the transaction speed is much better performance even on the base layer on ACALA. I think it's already ready for adaptation. And after those, I think there's will be, if you look at the long-term vision of like Polkadot, there's actually like Polkadot within Polkadot. So at some stage, maybe 3 years down in the road, when you outgrow, when there's like billions of users in the project, then you can start to see your project become a relation, and it's like Polkadot within a Polkadot, and that's like in the long-term vision of like how we can solve this. So I think ultimately there's going to be many solutions for scalability, and we are all pushing for the better good, right? Cheaper cost for the participant to trade, a faster performance, things like that.
Yes, and that's what's going to set you apart, quite sincerely, because let's be real, the people who want to essentially use these technologies, these protocols, these primitives, they want to do it in the most opportune way, in the most optimal way. And if you're faster, cheaper, better, they're going to pay attention whether or not we are waving the banner of our particular brand or our particular blockchain or blockchains. So Betty, in that sense, I really wanted to ask you about Binance, because obviously it's a CeFi, it's a decentralized entity, we know that, but then we have the BSC, the Binance Smart Chain. And I do see also there's natural sort of synergy in terms of support and interest coming from Polkadot and Binance. There's a lot of backing even in relation to Binance supporting Polkadot. So I really wanted to find out more, because you are advocates, staunchly so, of DeFi. And we know again that there is the BSC that arguably has elements of DeFi built into it, but with yet that complexity of CeFi, I guess, architecture behind it. So what are your thoughts on this? Should we be opening up the conversation to CeFi also?
I think it kind of just proves what we just said, right? What do user cares? Especially folks who are not idealists or very early crypto adopters, right? I think we've kind of, maybe we can say we passed that stage. We've crossed that chasm. Now we're kind of entering into mainstream adoption. When you go to mainstream folks, right, your everyday people, they wouldn't have any attachment to whichever blockchain technology, whichever thought leader, because they have no idea of any of that. There's no history there. So what do they care more? They actually care the stuff that we actually all want to deliver, which is actually very accessible financial products that everybody can use, and then also make their money work for them. And I think Binance has done a good job. Just from that product perspective, that they are serving many, many people across the globe. And their product certainly delivers those values, right? The product values. But of course, Binance is a centralized platform. And then they are having efforts to move into the decentralized realm. And then from our perspective, again, we don't actually see this black or white, 0 or 1, because there's many different choices, many different users. The future could be hi-fi, like it could be hybrid DeFi and CeFi, all plugged into it together and seamlessly. And then the end user would just enjoy the end product.
It's a really good point, Betty, and I think it's bold and brave of you to say, and thank you so much for doing so, because in 2021, all the people I talk to, that's the same sentiment I'm hearing from the top, is that there is this hybrid right now. There is acceptance for sort of where we're positioned in the CeFi to DeFi continuum. But I wanted to ask you, Ruitao, is the vision to really eventually get to more and more ever closer to that DeFi goal and vision, where it's full automation, full relaxation of any kinds of top-down control or even group team control?
Well, I think the goal of like every decentralized protocol, how do you judge if a decentralized protocol is successful or not? Is that if the founding team goes away, or if the founding member goes away, the protocol still works and is still serving its participant. I think I wouldn't call them user, because on DeFi, the user is also the stakeholder. So they are much better to call them participants. So if you look at a mature decentralized protocol, if you look at Bitcoin today, so Satoshi walked away. No one knows who he is, but still, Bitcoin is serving everyone every single day. So we would like to achieve that as like the ultimate goal of like the ACALA protocol or as a project. But ultimately, we also think like to serve the wider population. Someone is not able. I don't think everyone will be able to like create a recovery phase and have like manage the key themselves, or things like that. So I don't think my mom is going to be able to do that. But the thing is that ultimately, the backbone of the financial sector will be driven on the blockchain. That's something that I'm convinced. So I think this is the future that we like to work towards. So you will be using some DeFi product, but you didn't realize that you are using the DeFi product. It's the backbone. It's the backbone that's driving the finance sector.
And to both of you, I wanted to ask this: do you even realize just how big ACALA could be? And I genuinely mean this. When we know that finance right around the world is, central to, that term is referring to trillions of dollars, not billions. We know that that's, the bedrock of economies and stabilizing societies. When we know also you're at one of those first movers technologically to thwart legacy models. Again, not to FOMO, this is really happening. Do you pinch yourself sometimes thinking just how big this could actually be when blockchain could underpin a whole new reconceptualization of money and finance?
Well, I think this is like a huge, we are still in a very early stage of movement. So I think for ACALA, it could be something like much, much bigger. But at the same time, we also think there's gonna be so many specialized network popping up as well. So we are not going to be the only one. We are going to be one of them. Hopefully, if we do our job right, if we are contributing to this network right, we will be one of like an so rich ecosystem that's driving the finance sector. So I think there's limitless upward potential for us from here, but there's also, we're not going to be the only one.
Yeah. Well, Betty, I wanted to also congratulate you with regard to, well, it was indirectly and directly. I want to find out from you. Recently, Plasm explained they made history with the cross-chain messaging with the XCMP. I mean, and you were certainly supporting that. How big is it to have that kind of technology kickstart into the space? You know, given that smart contract interoperability, composability really does matter to bind all of these things, all these devs together and all these initiatives. And also in that context, if you could reference the WASM as well, because I also was thinking about Cosmos and different other blockchains as well, engaging in that world of the WebAssembly. How important are these embedded sort of movements and strategies and technologies?
Yeah, I think, you know, like for, we say cross-chain very generally, right? Because cross-chain can mean many different things, and you can cross-chain in many different technological way, you know, in Cosmos, on Polkadot, or some other bridges that's being built, right? But I think that the key thing here is the reason why, you know, in Polkadot or the setup like Polkadot, you can actually have a lot of innovations building up very quickly is the trust between those cross-chain communications, right? You know, it's easy for me to send you a message and then cross-continent, but it's not easy to say you can just trust the message that I sent, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a meaningful cross-chain transaction, is you can trust the value, trust the state that gets sent across from a different blockchain, right? Because if they all have different consensus, or if they under different regimes, you know, how do you ensure that level of trust? So I think that interaction between ACALA and Plasm is kind of like a practical proof that this is possible, you know, a trust between two different specialized blockchains, and provided by Polkadot, which actually guarantees all the chains connected to Polkadot actually share that meaningful cross-chain transaction, and making that possible. It is a long coming, right? If you follow Polkadot, it's been a number of years since they wrote, you know, created their first GitHub repo. So now we are kind of witnessing all of those thoughts and actually turns into code, and actually be able to send that first message across each other. That moment, it probably reminded me of that historical moment when the internet first came out. You know, the two universities, you know, from their big machine sending the first hello world or something like that to each other. So it was a bit like that moment at the time. But I think what happens after that, probably people didn't quite imagine, right? So from sending just one message, simple text, hello world, to later on, now we have all the apps that we're using today, all the technology that we have today. So it's the same. I think it's going to be same, but it's going to be faster, because now we have the stack, we have the technology that all the chains is going to be composable, and then things that wouldn't be possible today with, you know, a single blockchain. Then very quickly you're going to see not just specialized blockchains. For example, on ACALA, you've got a DeFi stack, but you're also going to see another layer of applications built on top of ACALA using smart contract, whether it's WASM or whether it's Solidity, doesn't matter. But they can all talk to each other within ACALA, as well as cross all the other blockchains connected to ACALA. And you can imagine what type of usability you're going to be able to deliver to the end user, right?
Wow. You know, let's stop there, because Betty, if this is a full stack and you could technically have tokenized applications on your own platform, just imagine what that means. I mean, we've seen the likes of already of all the hype of different first wave entrants of those DApps in different ecosystems of layer one. And because essentially you are that bridging technology, you have that primitives, but you could also be technically regarded, couldn't you, as some kind of sort of hybrid layer one in one sense, if you're going to also cater for DApps.
Yeah, so parachains are kind of layer one.
Yeah.
Because, you know, ACALA, while we offer products to the end users, if you use our DApp, you can, you have a user interface, you can create a loan and do transactions and things like that as an end user, right? But you can also participate as a developer, because ACALA is also a platform. There are smart contract capability, or you can actually build, more I guess, more customized at a lower level as well. For example, with the RAM protocol, they deployed their bridge gateway on ACALA that actually brings Bitcoin onto Polkadot and also makes that accessible across all the blockchains connected to Polkadot, right? So you can actually build at multiple level, and ACALA is a platform as well. We lesser advertise for it because we are kind of like a believer of there's a chicken and egg problem, right? So we're kind of a believer that we got to eat our own dog food and then create the best products and then create liquidity and then bring in the user. Then I think developers and others will actually come build on top of it. So we are bootstrapping ourselves, basically eating our own dog food.
Right. Well, when it comes to TGE, when it comes to these launches, we do need to talk about that at some stage. But I just can't help but be excited because one of the things you recently said also in an interview is that these parachains specifically are finite resources. If we look at that within the Polkadot ecosystem, and we know that there is a finite number of them in that sense as well. And to be one, to be one of those 100 essentially in that rough ballpark number, that's a really big deal because, again, as you said, these function as independent ecosystems within a larger one. They function as proper technological platforms as well within the broader, more robust, Parity and Polkadot world, and even beyond that now with multi-chain. So the reality is, given that you are going to have that token fuel, that utility premise, that utility center, the potential of the token, when I'm talking about utility, forget about FOMO for price. It is really big because you are going to be your own core parachain, your own core operator for supporting multiple different tokenized startups, endeavors. The mind boggles because you haven't even seen this happen yet. And yet people perhaps don't know the gravity of what you're actually doing.
I think that's okay.
Well, I think so
okay.
too.
Because we can't wait till we launch, right? Having the first transaction, the first loan being created, the first DEX swap, the first trustless staking happening on the chain. I think seeing is believing, right? It's hard to very abstract and conceptually convey the idea to people, but once you can click one button and then make your money work for you, do you ask another question?
It's a really good point. Well, let's talk about that now because we're laughing about it, but everyone in the speculative world is dreaming about this TGE. Let's be honest. So what's happening there in terms of the roadmap? Obviously we want to see this emerging utility really fire. We want to see this progress. And I personally certainly want to take part in this. I know I do because who wouldn't, this really who is studying this from the sort of tech premise, and wanting to support this utility movement. But Ruitao, when is this TG happening? This token generation event? When is that we're going to see all of this planning that you've been doing for years together as your team going to unfold and be available to the world?
Well, I wouldn't call it a TGE. In fact, we call it a PLO or like the production auction offering or whatever it costs. It's very, very different from a TGE or an ICO because the actual participant of a production auction is at no risk of losing their dots. So they're going to support their dots through staking their dot against the ACALA project, so bootstrapping the ACALAs by providing security, and at no circumstance the production auction participant is getting the custody of their dot leaving their wallet. So this is very, very different from like a typical TGE or ICO. So we call it like a PLO or the production auction or call it whatever. We think it's a new product that Polkadot is trying to set as well. And ultimately it will create a positive feedback, a feedback loop for the ecosystem. So the project itself needs to prove that they're going to deliver something meaningful by attracting enough dot supporter. And the project itself gets nothing but a slot, like a stage to perform. So that actually put the project responsible and accountable to deliver what they promised to deliver the value. And in a positive way, it also affects the dot ecosystem. So the more solid project get into the dot ecosystem, the more solid the whole ecosystem move as a whole as well. So I think this is very, very different from a TG's point of view.
Sorry, my apologies for even using that term because clearly the auctions are that cornerstone event or series of events that are coming from many auctions. So when is that likely to roll out? Can you teach us a bit more about the roadmap there? And also, I did want to ask you this boldly because I noticed that Betty had tweeted about just this particular entity, and that was CoinList. The reason being is because they have a really high reputation. That's why I went down that TGE track, because I thought, well, maybe they're thinking that way. But clearly it's this auction approach. So what does it mean? What's the plan? And clarify for us the access.
Yeah, I think there's so many options for a participant to joining this project auction, but ultimately all the event were revolving into like this project auction, which is like the dot stake against the ACALA chain, and then getting the ACALA chain genesis, bootstrapping on Polkadot, getting these slots. There's no definitive date of when project and functionality will become available. I mean, we will be working very closely with Parity, but it's always the case that it will be ready when it's ready. We know it's getting close, but it will be ready when it's ready.
I can hear what you're saying. I can hear you saying, we're not going to tell you, Brad. We are not telling you. Okay. And I've got that same vibe from Betty before.
As soon as we know, we're going to announce it on our official channel. So I know a lot of people are anticipating this big moment. It's a big moment for us too, because no one has ever done this before. So we're aiming to be, the first parachain launch on Kusama, as well as Polkadot, right? So no one has done this before, using a crowdsourced way to, getting support to actually just launch, right? Because ACALA at no any point in time touch any of those dots that people put into the fund. That fund is mostly only just for the bond to actually get access to Polkadot's share security, right? That's the whole point. So, so the project actually gets no funding, but we get one shot. We get an opportunity through the period that we can prove ourselves by delivering the products and services. So, and then a message to potential participants is like, if you are choosing, different chains, you should actually look at rather than this is very different from your vegetable yield farming craze. You're just staring at the 4-digit APY, and then you make your decision. I think this is different because of all that incentive alignment for the parachain auction. You got to pick the projects that you think is going to deliver value, that you think is going to be successful and helping the Polkadot ecosystem to grow. And then you put your bets on it, because as soon as you lock your dot, you're kind of like giving up the opportunity cost, right? You didn't give up your dot, but you give up opportunity cost in return for what? Even you are promised like 2,000 APY, but if you times that with 0, as value that deliver at the end, then you still get 0 at the end, right? So I think rationally, you should actually think which projects you like, which seems to the product that you actually want to use, and those will be the ones that you probably put your bets against as well. So.
And that's what's super exciting about this, is that you said like, and then you said use in that same context, because it will be the usefulness of this that determines, I guess, the interest in this for the general user around the world, as the seamless experience happens more, as it becomes more relevant. So I love this model because it's bringing back the user-centric idea of what we're all aspiring to support, whether it be from education or you yourselves as developers. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to also seeing people become more aware of ACALA through these auctions. I think it's really going to illuminate you in the space. Now, I wanted to ask you just more broadly, why Polkadot? Why the eco? Why stablecoin? Why Substrate, Parity, Karura, Kusama, Rococo? So many things there. You constantly always are, supporting Gavin, supporting Parity in all the tweets you make and all the discussions. Why do so? Why was it so attractive to move across in that area?
Well, I think we did a lot of research. Like, we are one of the very early builder in Substrate or in Polkadot. Like, we have been building on this for over 2 years. In fact, Brian, one of our co-founders, is one of the top contributor to Substrate to Polkadot outside Parity, and pretty much all our engineers are contributor to the Polkadot code base, to the Substrate code base. The reason why is because we look at the possibility. If you're looking for a platform to develop something on top of that, you are looking for like what new possibility this particular platform enable you to do, right? So if you look at it, Bitcoin, if you want to work as a developer of Bitcoin, the only way that you can do that is probably like creating some form of a centralized exchange, having to facilitate value transfer in Bitcoin. And then you look at Ethereum. Ethereum is a smart contract platform. You're able to create that. That's one new possibility, and that's awesome. And if you look at Polkadot, it creates one more possibility for developer like us. Like, we can create a blockchain fully customized without worrying about security. And without creating a liquidity silo, which is like your chain, even if you create your own custom chain, still interconnected. And that's like the new possibility that we see. It's only unique in Polkadot, and that's why we are so it's aligned with what we believe, like the multi-chain future, and that's why there's like all the answer clicks, and why we're committed to Substrate and Polkadot. And in terms of like the other positive effects, that Polkadot or the Substrate community is more of like an organically driven, developer-friendly community. So back in 2 years ago, pretty much everyone in Polkadot, in Substrate are developers. We know all the good builders back then. I mean, everyone was talking about, hey, how this tech help us to solve this problem? How can we fix this problem by writing this actual few line of code or things like that? So it's like organically, the developer is attracting other developer into this platform, and we are engineer ourselves. We are so attracted to this sort of culture, and that's why everything fits.
Yeah, and I mean, it's exciting also. You're the kind of people who also stay at the forefront of innovation, even at the layer zero. That's why I asked, because I'm sure if there was something even better out there, you will have followed it through and worked with them. So Betty, I wanted to ask you as well, like we talk about partnership in crypto, but then there's the partnership that's real, sustainable and genuine in the blockchain tech domain. So what's exciting you with regard to partnerships you're forging to build on the sort of the tech narrative of ACALA as you move forward? Because no doubt you're talking with all kinds of teams right now.
Yeah, so of course, ultimately, I was hoping that there will be integrations, there will be deployments and apps composing with ACALA's primitives without even asking us to say we have a partnership, announcing that we're collaborating, because this is the true decentralized or permissionless, right? You don't need to ask for permission to actually use any of ACALA's primitives. So that's ultimately that I think it will be cool, when we get there.
Well, that'll be good for free marketing then, because there'll be so many integrations that happen anyway.
Yeah, and then as we evolve, though, we have many levels of collaboration. Obviously, with all the parachains, we're pushing this composable with hashtag, right? So you're gonna see Plasm composable with ACALA composable with Polka BTC, and then composable with many other really solid parachains in the space. I think every chain connected together should be composable with each other. That at least should be a goal. I think even beyond Polkadot. In Polkadot, I think it's a baseline that everybody can be composable with each other. But beyond that, we also working with many different bridges, right? That will gonna be cross, high quality assets from various different places, into ACALA. But of course, once they land on ACALA, then they open up another universe within Polkadot, within Kusama, etc. And so that's the first thing, that is like aggregating all the liquidity together. And then of course, beyond that, we're also a platform. So there are, smart contract or existing, DApps that are interested, probably not ditch Ethereum like many people feared. They actually thinking outside of their, their current frame of business, thinking, can we open shops in some other places that seems to gonna have like business users and use cases, right? So we are talking to a number of these DApps. Is like, oh, in addition to Ethereum, can we open shop on Polkadot? Land on ACALA.
We have to talk about this. This is huge. So you're talking about really mainstay, well-known applications right now that could actually franchise out. Essentially, bridge out with the technology, be known already existing as some of these core and fundamental adapts that exist in Ethereum now, technically could now be known in ACALA as well. Is that what you're saying?
So we're working with a number of them, and they. The thing is, everyone come to us with a different challenge they have, right? Some of them very simple challenge. Well, obviously is gas, but also some of them just want to expand their business, right? So they want their main monetary policy stay in Ethereum still, which is fair, but they want to open a shop, like a front end contracts that can serve the Polkadot ecosystem, because that's going to be 100 chains, right? And then a few hundred dApps. So for each one of them, a slightly different use case. So that's why we don't actually make many announcements. We don't do that. So we usually do co-dating. So trying to figure out the problem, and then trying to figure out what are the best solution for those teams, and then actually build stuff And then until the right time comes, then we actually tell people.
And you know what's so exciting about that is that it makes complete sense why you had some of those DeFi backers from the Ethereum community as well, Betty, because even more now you're saying this, it would make the Ethereum devs so happy to know that they can have that front end, that front shop sort of position. It only enhances the value of Ethereum as Ethereum continues to build. And so it really just builds out that true multi-chain support. It means that you have that composability. For the first time, we can really talk in a real sense about that, because the maximalists have been arguing that nothing is available. Now, in that sense, I wanted to ask you, there's so much that's happened in the roadmap so far this year, from all of the testnet and Rococo work, from the Injective Labs integrations, ACALA Dollar, the EVM is massive with the launch there, so congratulations. What about in the coming months? What's something that you're really excited about as you continue to technologically tinker, as you continue to tweak that code? What's something that no one else in the world would know that you are excited about as you start to experiment for the coming months?
Ruitao?
That you're willing to tell us?
Well, I would be publicly saying that I would be so excited that if the ACALA's product suite goes live and get launched, I will be so excited that we can actually use the protocol that we created, because it's actually in demand. Like in our office every day, we're talking about how we can actually start to use our product that we created. Elder itself is gonna be super useful. If you look at Polkadot today, the minimum staking amount of dots is like 200 dots. And that's the base, that's Polkadot's one limitation. Parity is addressing that. But if you think about, there's a lot of small dot holders, they would like to get reward of their dots. So the L dot will actually open a gateway for them to chip in the small amount of dots, get some L dot, get the return of those dots. So I think generally what I'm excited is that the product suite that we created already, and I would like to mention that our product suite has been audited by 3 independent security audit firms, the most reputable one. We just finished our security audit with 12 bits. So we are all set, we are all ready to launch the product. So what am I excited? I'm excited to use our own product.
I'm excited too. I'm excited that you're excited, and I think it's happening sooner than you're telling us, and I can't wait to find out what's happening there. And I love that you won't tell me, but I'm also frustrated that you won't. But I just wanted to finish off and say thank you so much to both of you. It's been so much longer than you even made time for, Betty, and I thank you for that, because it's been such a valuable a means for us to learn more about ACALA. Obviously, I wanted to also reference that it seems like emerging right now, there's Polkadot and Polkadot, in terms of suffixes or prefixes. And it's important for us to do our due diligence and make sure we understand what specifically is that high quality tech that's coming from the Polkadot world. Make sure that you do your code checks, make sure you do your team checks. And I certainly did when I first spoke with you, and I'm so glad I did, because right now this second interview wouldn't have happened, and all that continual learning for years to come. I hope, it's just going to be exciting to have chances to speak with you further, and I wish you all the very best. Is there anything you'd like to say, either of you, as a final comment for 221 for Q1, as you really start to showcase that beginning, and as Ruitao's excitement indicates, it's coming soon?
Yeah, I think for my side, it's just like there's many different opportunities for folks to participate in ACALA, because as I think Ruitao alluded to that, is everyone is a participant, everyone is a stakeholder, and this is a point, get yourself educated and also find ways to participate, and then I guess the future is everybody's. And then another thing I want to say, just like thank you, Bradley, as a very solid educator in the space. Appreciate all the work that you've done so far.
You're so welcome. And Ruitao, what about you, mate? What would you like to do to finish off with this passion you have for what's coming? And you certainly know more than almost anyone in the world about that.
Well, first, obviously, thank you, Brad, to having us. I mean, obviously, I would just to reinforce the ideas that the DeFi movement is still at very early stage. It's actually going to turn to something like hundreds times or thousands times larger than what we see today. So stay humble, keep building the product, keep create something useful, and the best is yet to come.
Absolutely, mate. Well said. I love the passion. I love how you come alive more and more through the interview. And also just that final point, remember these words: a decentralized finance hub and stablecoin platform powered for cross-blockchain liquidity and applications. It's a lot to say, but what it really means is that connective glue, that blockchain's agenda, that pluralistic multi-chain system that's really going to power a whole game-changing system that we've never seen before. ACALA is part of that narrative and part of that code and a part of that tech and a part of that team. So keep going, guys. Don't stop. And I cannot wait to see when we see very soon just what this token can do when it comes to utilities. So stay tuned.